Hello, this is Jenna with Books Love Jenna, and it's a Saturday morning after a very, very busy work week for me, and some emotion last night as I said goodbye to my eighth graders, who half of them are moving on to other schools. Half I'll see next year as ninth graders, but they're no longer my eighth graders. As of this moment, I no longer I'm no longer a grade level lead. Might not be an advisor, definitely a teacher, definitely still a teacher. But this group marked the end, for a while anyway, of that level of responsibility for me, for which I am really, really relieved. But at the same time, this class really, really got my heart. And so, yeah, I would say they're probably among the top four of classes I've had over the last 26 years. So, I had to say goodbye to them, and we sent them off with a really great promotion ceremony. I don't know if they do that where you are. Here in the Pacific Northwest, it's a pretty big deal. I feel like it's a little overdone, especially when I have to event plan it. But there's so many things as I am event planning that I think, do we really need to do this? Someone inevitably says, yes, we do need all of this wildness. But that's all done. And now I'm going to focus on Jane Austen July. So, I have 3 more days of work, no children, just cleaning, packing, report cards, meetings. So 3 more days of work, actually like 2.5 more days of work. And then it's June, and I'm going to call the rest of June Hibernation June. I'm just going to stay home and read. I do have an appointment to get new glasses. I have one lunch scheduled with a friend who is going to be traveling in the month of July. So I have those 2 events. And other than that, I will be home on my couch with my air conditioner. I don't need it today, but I might need it in the end of June. And lots of coffee and quiet and a big, big, big stack of books. The lighting changed because the glare on my glasses was bothering me, so I closed the curtains from the window in front of me. Also, if you can hear the dishwasher, I don't know if you can, but the dishwasher is running, so if you hear a little glug glug in the background, that's what's happening. But never, I don't think ever have I had a Jane Austen July video that was solely dedicated to books about Jane Austen and her time. And I really have that this time, with the exception of one book, because I have to read my 12 and 12 recommendations book. And this time I was recommended by a friend to read The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. So I will be reading this. I don't actually know what it's about. So it says, in 1950s Tehran, 7-year-old Ellie lives in grand comfort until the untimely death of her father, forcing her and her mother to move to a tiny home downtown. Lonely and bearing the brunt of her mother's endless grievances, Ellie dreams of having a friend to alleviate her isolation. Luckily, on the first day of school, she meets Homa, a kind, passionate girl with a brave and irrepressible spirit. Together, the 2 girls play games, learn to cook in the stone kitchen of Homa's warm home, wander through the colorful stalls of the Grand Bazaar, and share their ambitions for becoming lion women. But their happiness is disrupted. Of course, it has to be, when Ellie and her mother are afforded the opportunity to return to their previous bourgeois life. As Ellie enjoys her new popularity at the best girls' school in Iran, her memories of Homa begin to fade. Years later, however, Homa's sudden reappearance in Ellie's privileged world alters the course of both their lives. Together, the young women come of age and pursue their own goals for meaningful futures. Okay, this is giving me My Brilliant Friend vibes, but maybe with a little less angst. I don't know, maybe, but it is giving me My Brilliant Friend vibes, only set in Iran. So that sounds fascinating and like a great a great divergence from Jane Austen fare. But mostly, I'm so excited, I will be reading books by and about Jane Austen. And I am inspired by, but not tied to, the prompts for Jane Austen July, always. This year, the prompts are the same, except they do have a group movie watch, which is the most recent version of Emma. And they also have a group Jane Austen read, which is Emma. And last year I said, it's about time I reread Emma. Emma is my least favorite Jane Austen novel. Jane Austen herself said that Emma was going to be hard to love, and I find that to be true. However, it's been a very long time since I have reread Emma. It is my least reread Jane Austen. And so when I saw that Emma was the group read, I decided, okay, I'm really going to do it. So I got myself a fresh copy. It is a used book, but it's completely clean. And I'm going to give this a real next chance. So I'll be reading Emma with the group, and I will be watching Emma with the group. I don't know if they're going to do like a group watch. They haven't figured it out yet, but everybody is encouraged to watch the newest version of Emma, which is on Netflix, and I will be doing that. For my own book club, Books Love Everyone, I've already put out the video that declares that we have 2 Jane Austen themed books for this month. One is Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney, and I have already explained what this book is about, and so you can go back and watch that video if you would like. But in a nutshell, this is a book by a rare bookseller who decided that she was going to find out who were the female authors that influenced Jane Austen and find out what happened to them, what their deal was, why we don't read them anymore. And then she gives like a dedicated chapter to each one. There are several. I think there are 7. I could be wrong about that, but I think 7 is the number. And you're going to see on my own TBR quite a few of the books that are featured in here this month. So we'll get there. The other book, the fiction book that we're going to read for Books Love Everyone, is The Jane Austen Project, which by Kathleen A. Flynn, which is about an actor and a researcher in the future who use time travel to go back to Jane Austen's life and get some answers to some much needed questions. This I read decades ago, a while ago, about a decade ago. And I remember absolutely loving it. I haven't reread it yet, but I am looking forward to a second read because I remember thinking that it was just phenomenal, and I'm excited to share it with people and discuss it with people. Some of these you will recognize. They've been on previous TBRs. Some of them have only been on TBRs a whole year ago for Jane Austen July, and I didn't get to them. Prioritized among those is Emma of 83rd Street by Audrey Beleza and Emily Harding, because it is a retelling of Emma and because it was one of my I was so excited to read this book a year ago for Jane Austen July, and I think it had just come out. I pre-ordered it and I didn't get to it, and then I thought, every time I looked at it, I thought I should wait for Jane Austen July, well, here we are. We're at Jane Austen July a year later, and I'm reading Emma, and I'm watching Emma, and I'm gonna read this retelling of Emma, and I am excited for that. So I'm prioritizing that one. But I also have 5 others that are somehow related to Jane Austen, which I believe all but one. So let's do that one first. You have seen on previous Jane Austen July TBRs. So you have not seen this one because I got this early this year. So this is Hannah Linder. She's an author I haven't read from. She is a Christian fiction author. I've never read from her, and I am interested in finding out if she's going to be among my new favorites. It is set in Jane Austen's time period. It is a romance, and so we'll see. It says, Nan and Heath Duncan, siblings abandoned by their papa and abused by their guardian, have no choice but to survive on the London streets. When a kind gentleman rescues Nan from such a life, the siblings are separated and raised in two vastly different social worlds. Just when both are beginning to flourish and years have healed some of their wounds, their long-awaited papa returns and reunites them, bringing demands with him. Papa insists Nan marry a rich suitor she's never liked, and Heath is expected to forsake his gentle spirit. I'm sorry, I don't think Heath would have been a name they used back then, but I'll look that up. Heath is expected to forsake his gentle spirit and become a hardened man like his father. Soon, dangers unfold, secret loves develop, fights ensue, and murder upsets the worlds Heath and Nan have built for themselves. They've waited their whole lives for their papa to return, for tomorrow to come. But now that it has, will they be able to see through the truth and end this whirlwind of a nightmare before it costs them their lives? Okay, it sounds like there's a lot going on here. A sibling story, maybe not a romance, a sibling story. And so I am going to give this author a try, and I do so a little trepidatiously, but also with a lot of curiosity. The next 4 books are all books that you have seen me put on TBRs before, probably Jane Austen July TBRs, but I really want to read them this year. One is definitely a romance. This is Something in the Air by Suzanne Enoch. And I think I saw Krista at Books and Jams recommend this one quite a while ago. And so I'm looking forward to reading this one. I think this is one where there is a fake marriage. I'm not sure. I think there's a fake marriage, but there's definitely fake dating, but I think it's a fake marriage. I think they pretend like they have children because the in-laws are coming. I don't know. I think it's going to be really funny. And of course, it's going to be romantic. It is set in Jane Austen's lifetime, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I've started this one and stopped this one twice, not because I wasn't enjoying it, just because it wasn't what I wanted in that moment, but I definitely think I'll want this in Jane Austen July. This is Suzanne Elaine's The Ladies Rewrite the Rules. Additionally, this one is very short. I should be able to read this. I probably will start from the beginning again because I feel like I need to. But this one says, Diana Boyle, a wealthy young widow, has no desire to ever remarry again, particularly not to someone who merely wants her for her fortune. So when she discovers that she's listed in a directory of rich single women, she is furious, and rightly so. She confronts Maxwell Dean, the man who published the Bachelor's Directory, and is horrified to find that he is far more attractive than his actions have led her to expect. However, Diana is unmoved by Max's explanation that he authored the list to assist younger sons like himself who cannot afford to marry unless it is to a woman of means. She gathers the ladies in the directory together to inform them of its existence so they may circumvent fortune hunters' efforts to trick them into marriage. Though outraged, the women decide to embrace their unique position of power and reverse the usual gender roles by making the men dance to their tune. And together, the ladies rewrite the rules. So, probably not historically accurate, but it is set during Jane Austen's time. It will be quite a romp. I do remember that I was enjoying what I was reading. It just wasn't what I wanted to read at the time twice in a row. This may be the third and final attempt to read this book for me. I hope that I love it. This is also a priority. I really wanted to read this last year and I didn't get to it. If you remember last year, I had, oh my goodness, I think I had about 60 books on my July TBR because I was so excited that I was going into summer. I was thinking I would just read all the time and I just didn't. And there were so many books I wanted to read. Well, what's done is done. And I did not get to this, and I really, really wanted to, but I will get to it this year. This is Vanessa Riley's Queen of Exiles. Queen of Exiles. And this also takes place during Jane Austen's lifetime. In 1810, Louise is crowned queen of the newly liberated kingdom of Haiti, as her husband begins his reign over the first and only free black nation in the Western Hemisphere. After a long and bloody revolution, Haitians still struggle under mountains of debt to France and indifference from former allies Britain and the new United States. Louise desperately tries to steer the country's political course as King Henry manages his internal strife. But in 1820, King Henry is overthrown by political rivals. Louise and her daughters flee to Europe, and in exile, the resilient Louise redefines her role, recovering Henry's lost fortune and establishing herself as an equal to the kings of European nations. With newspapers and gossip tracking their every movement, Louise and her daughters tour Europe like other royals, complete with glittering balls and princes with marriage proposals. As they find their footing and acceptance, they discover more about themselves, their blackness, and the opportunities they can grasp in a European and male-dominated world. Queen of Exiles is the tale of a canny and bold survivor who chooses the fire and ideals of political struggle and then is forced to rebuild her life on her own terms. Forever a queen. So, Queen of Exiles. I really, really, really want to read this. Yes. And then finally, I just watched Miss Austen, the BBC drama. I just watched it last weekend, and contrary to all logic, because I had so much to do, but I needed an escape, and those 4 episodes of that beautiful, beautiful show were so good. So I am definitely going to prioritize the other book by Jill Hornby that involves Jane Austen, which is Godman Park. And I intended to read this last year, and I did not get to it. And to be honest, I really did not enjoy Miss Austen, the book, all that much. And so although I am so curious about this book, and I do really want to read it, there is something about Jill Hornby's writing that puts me to sleep. We'll just say. She doesn't bore me, she just lulls me. And so I'm not always in the right mood to pick up a book by her. And I think, though, that watching and loving Miss Austen as a screen adaptation will inspire me to maybe be more visual in my reading while I am reading this book, and to kind of imagine it more cinematically, and I think that that might help me. I am wanting to know the contents of this book, but sometimes the contents and the experience have 2 different effects on a reader, and so I am definitely going to try and read this, and also not beat myself up if it's a slog and I put it down again. Now I have 5 books by 4 authors that inspired Jane Austen. These are female authors that are all mentioned in this book. And these titles, I believe, are all mentioned in this book. I read this as an ARC before it came out and loved it a little over a year ago. And I will be rereading it. But I know that all these authors are mentioned. I think all these books are mentioned by name. The first one is one that I had on my Jane Austen July TBR last year, but didn't get to, and that is Elizabeth Inchbald and her book, A Simple Story. This is a female author that wrote before Jane Austen, or during Jane Austen, but Jane Austen read this book and had thoughts. She had thoughts. So this one says, when Miss Milner announces her passion for her guardian, a Catholic priest, she breaks through the double barrier of his religious vocation and her society's standards of proper womanly behavior. Her love is legitimized when Dorriforth is released from his vows, but her own unorthodox nature cannot be contained by a marriage where her husband continues to be a stern moral guide. Elizabeth Inchbald is concerned with the question of a woman's proper education, and in a novel whose sureness of touch and subtlety of characterization prefigure Jane Austen's work, she shows that there is no simple answer. So this one is going to be, I think, quite a fun read. I think Jane Austen really read novels that pushed the boundary. And I think that there were a lot of female authors that were writing novels that pushed the boundary. And I think that we should be reading them. So I am really looking forward to giving this one a try. as is Lola. Really looking forward to giving this one a try. I have 2 books by the wild, dashing, and daring Anne Radcliffe that I would like to read. I don't know that I will get to both of them in the month of July, but I want to get to both of them before the year is up. The one I'm going to prioritize for July is The Romance of the Forest, because I think this one is mentioned in Emma. And so this one says, I've never read this one. It says, set in a Roman Catholic Europe of violent passions and extreme oppression, the novel follows the fate of its heroine, Adeline, who is mysteriously placed under the protection of a family fleeing Paris for debt. They take refuge in a ruined abbey in southeastern France, where sinister relics of the past, a skeleton, a manuscript, and a rusty dagger, are discovered in concealed rooms. Adeline finds herself at the mercy of the abbey's proprietor, a libidinous marquess, I can't say that word, libidinous, like libido, libidinous, marquis, whose attentions finally force her to contemplate escape to distant regions. The Romance of the Forest is rich in allusions to aesthetic theory and to travel literature. It is also concerned with current philosophical debate. The hedonism preached and practiced by the Marquis is contrasted with the Rousseaustic values of Rousseaustic values of a clergyman and his family whom Adeline meets in Savoy, opposing systems of thought central to the intellectual life of late 18th century Europe. Okay, so political and religious discussion in the guise of a campy thriller horror novel. I'm there for it. I tend to really enjoy Anne Radcliffe and time with Anne Radcliffe. And so I actually may finish that book and go, ooh, I need more. And this is the last Anne Radcliffe book after The Romance of the Forest that I have yet to read. And so I've got The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. I don't know if I'll get to this one in the month of July, but it is possible. It is absolutely possible. So this one says, Father Schedone is enlisted by the imperious Marchesa di Vivaldi to prevent her son from marrying the beautiful Elena. Schedone has scruples in kidnapping Elena and in undertaking whatever villainy will further his own ends. His menacing presence dominates a gripping tale of love and betrayal, abduction and assassination, and incarceration in the dreadful dungeons of the Inquisition. Anne Radcliffe defined the terror genre of writing and helped to establish the Gothic novel, thrilling readers with her mysterious plots and eerie effects. In The Italian, she rejects the rational certainties of the Enlightenment for a more ambiguous and unsettling account of what it is to be an individual, particularly a woman, in a culture dominated by institutional power. This new edition includes Radcliffe's important essay on the supernatural in poetry. Ooh, I will also read that, in which she distinguishes terror writing from horror. Oh, and I just labeled Romance of the Forest horror, but she's going to explain to me why. It's terror, not horror. Ooh, I like that. I'm looking forward to that. It makes me want to read both of them even more. I am going to read my first Mariah Edgeworth. I've never read one. I've never owned one, but I picked up a used copy of Belinda. I know that Jane Austen really enjoyed Mariah Edgeworth's writing in particular. I have no idea. I have no idea what this is about or what her writing is like. I don't know if I'm going to be super excited by it or what. I have no clue. So on the back, it says, in Belinda, 1801, Mariah Edgeworth's treatment of gender and race issues, ooh, I had no idea. Okay, gender and race issues is at once comic and thought-provoking. Comic, I had no idea. Okay, I should trust Jane Austen's judgment. Braving the perils of the marriage market, Belinda learns to think for herself as the examples of her friends prove singularly unreliable. Edgeworth's varied cast includes the bewitching aristocrat Lady Delacour, whose dreadful secret puts her in the power of her volatile servant, the dashing Creole gentleman Mr. Vincent, who almost succeeds in winning Belinda's hand, if not her heart, and the eccentric Clarence Hervey, who attempts to create an ideal wife, backfire. This lively comedy, I had no idea. This lively comedy challenges the conventions of courtship, examines questions of female independence, and exposes the limits of domesticity. Oh, it confronts the difficult and fascinating issues of racism and mixed marriage, which Edgeworth later toned down. So this is the first edition. This is the 1802 edition, which doesn't tone down. Okay, I like that. I had no idea. No clue. I was thinking it would be a boring novel of manners, but it doesn't at all sound that way, and I should trust Jane Austen. End of story. I should trust Jane Austen. Finally, I am going to read a Frances Burney. I'm going to read Eveina. Eveina. I've not read Eveina. I've read another Frances Burney. Cecilia, maybe? I've read another Frances Burney, but I have not read this one. So this one, and I did enjoy her writing. It was a little slow. Definitely a little slow. But I did enjoy it. So this one says, Frances Burney's first and most enduringly popular novel. Oh, that's good news. That's a good sign. Is a vivid, satirical, and seductive account, my goodness, of the pleasures and dangers of fashionable life in late 18th century London. As she describes her heroine's entry into society, womanhood, and inevitably love, Burney exposes the vulnerability of female innocence in an image-conscious and often cruel world where social snobbery and sexual aggressions are played out in the public arenas of pleasure gardens, theater visits, and balls. But Evelina's innocence also makes her a shrewd commentator on the excesses and absurdities of manners and social ambitions, as well as attracting the attention of the eminently eligible Lord Oroville. Evelina, comic and shrewd, is at once a guide to fashionable London, a satirical attack on the new consumerism, an investigation of women's positions in the late 18th century, and a love story. The new introduction and full notes to this edition help make the richness of the more readily available to a modern reader. Okay, we all know that you don't read the introduction first. If you've never read the book, you read the introduction last. They should just put the introductions last. I'm excited. Oh my goodness. I hadn't read the back of any of these. I just purchased them because they were the titles and the authors that were in the Jane Austen's bookshelf book. Extremely excited about reading these books in Jane Austen July. And the others. And the others. I was more excited about the others until I read the back of these. So, what are you reading for Jane Austen July? Do you participate in Jane Austen July? Do you enjoy Jane Austen's writing? Let me know. Let me know all the things down in the comments below, and I will see you around. And until I do, in the meantime, let's go read.